When you think of the Industrial Revolution, you probably picture the dark, satanic mills of Manchester or the sprawling ironworks of the Black Country. You think of big names like Stephenson and Watt, but what if I told you that one of the most important inventions of the modern age, the world's first commercially successful steam locomotive, wasn't born in a massive factory, but at a small workshop in the heart of Yorkshire? What if I told you that the reason ships can cross oceans without getting lost, the reason we can build massive skyscrapers, and even the reason you can recycle a glass bottle, all trace their roots back to this one assuming counter in the north of England? This is the story of how a quiet corner of England didn't just participate in the modern world, it helped build it. You can't tell the story of the modern world without talking about the railway, but long before George Stephenson's famous rocket won the Rainhill trials in 1829, the critical problem wasn't speed, it was brute force, specifically how to haul enormous amounts of coal out of the collieries that fueled Britain's rise. Horses were expensive, and during the Napoleonic Wars they were getting harder and harder to come by. The answer came from a Leeds workshop in 1812. The genius behind it was a man you've likely never heard of, Matthew Murray. Murray was a brilliant engineer who ran his firm out of Holbeck, Leeds, designing machine tools and textile machinery. The manager of the Middleton colliery, a man named John Blenkinsop, had a problem. He needed to move coal, but the existing iron rails were too flimsy to support a heavy locomotive that could get enough grip to pull the wagons. Blenkinsop's clever idea was a rack and pinion system, a track with teeth on one side that a cogwheel on the engine could grip, preventing slips. But it was Matthew Murray who brought this version to life, building on Richard Trevithick's earlier work with high-pressure steam. Murray engineered something revolutionary. He designed an engine with two cylinders instead of one, which delivered smoother, more reliable power. The result was the Salamanca. In 1812, it became the world's first commercially successful steam locomotive, hauling wagons loaded with coal from the Middleton colliery to Leeds. It was so successful that it replaced 50 horses and 200 men, and Murray's firm built three more. One of these was sent near Newcastle, where it was observed by a young and upcoming engineer named George Stephenson, who modelled his own early locomotive, the Blucher, on Murray's two-cylinder design. For all its success, the Salamanca and its creator have been largely overshadowed by the legend of Stephenson's rocket, which came 17 years later. But the very first painting of a steam locomotive in history isn't of the rocket, it's a watercolour from 1814 depicting the Salamanca chugging along the Middleton Railway. The Industrial Revolution had found its engine, and it was fired up in a workshop in Leeds. It wasn't just on land that Yorkshire was leading the way. While Murray was conquering locomotion, another more fundamental problem was paralysing the world's oceans: the problem of longitude. For centuries, sailors could figure out their latitude, their position north or south, by observing the sun. But longitude, their position east or west, was a deadly mystery. Without knowing their exact longitude, ships were flying blind. They regularly ended up miles off course, leading to shipwrecks, lost cargo, and countless deaths. After a naval disaster in 1707, the British government offered a massive prize, up to £20,000, that's millions in today's money, to anyone who could solve it. The scientific elite of the age, astronomers and mathematicians, were convinced the answer lay in the stars. They were all wrong. The answer came from a self-educated carpenter and clockmaker from Foulby, a small village near Pontefract, West Yorkshire. His name was John Harrison. Harrison understood the theory. Since the Earth turns at a steady 15 degrees per hour, if you knew the time at your home port and the local time where you were, you could calculate your longitude. The problem was, no clock could keep accurate time on a pitching, rolling ship, where temperature and humidity changed constantly. It was considered impossible. For decades, Harrison dedicated his life to achieving the impossible. He built a series of ingenious timekeepers, starting with his H1, a complex machine of brass gears and counter-swinging beams. But his masterpiece was the H4, a device that looked like a large, elegant pocket watch. In 1761, the H4 was tested on a grueling 81-day voyage to Jamaica. When the ship arrived, Harrison's chronometer had lost only 5.1 seconds. It was a staggering achievement of accuracy. A self-taught craftsman from Yorkshire had solved the single greatest scientific challenge of his era. John Harrison's invention transformed maritime navigation, making long-distance sea travel safe and underpinning the expansion of global trade and the power of the British Navy. He had wrestled the world's whereabouts from the stars and locked the secret in a Yorkshire-made clock. If you enjoyed this video about the hidden histories that shaped our world, then take a moment to subscribe and hit that bell icon. Yorkshire's ingenuity wasn't just about moving things or measuring time, it was also about creating force. Immense, controllable, world-altering force. For that, we turn to another prolific inventor, Joseph Bramah, born in the village of Stainborough near Barnsley, West Yorkshire. Bramah was a locksmith and an inventor with a mind that saw potential everywhere, patenting everything from an improved flushing toilet to the beer pump that first let pubs keep their kegs in a cool cellar. But his most important invention, patented in 1795, was a hydraulic press. The science behind it, known as Pascal's principle, had been around for over a century. Pressure applied to a fluid in a closed container is transmitted equally throughout, but nobody had managed to harness it. Bramah did. He designed a machine with two pistons, a small one and a large one. A small force applied to the small piston was translated into an enormous force on the large one, and suddenly humanity could press, bend and shape materials with a power that was previously unimaginable. The Bramah press, as it's still known, became a cornerstone of the Industrial Revolution and a fundamental tool of modern manufacturing. It's used for forging metal, moulding plastics and in countless other industrial processes. Every time you see a piece of heavy construction equipment, from a crane to an excavator, you are seeing a direct descendant of the principle perfected by a man from Barnsley. Joseph Bramah is considered one of the fathers of hydraulic engineering, a field he essentially created, proving that a single Yorkshire mind could generate an entire new branch of technology. From the steam-powered heart of the railway in Leeds to the mastery of time and space from Pontefract to the creation of industrial force in Barnsley, a pattern emerges. The story of the modern world is woven with threads of Yorkshire ingenuity. And that spirit didn't end in the 19th century. In 1977, long after the age of steam, the UK's very first bottle bank for recycling glass was launched in Barnsley. The project, championed by Stanley Race of the Glass Manufacturers Federation, was so successful that within 6 months, 500 tonnes of glass had been collected nationally, kicking off the recycling movement in Britain. It was another practical transformative idea born from Yorkshire that quietly changed the nation. The history we learn is often a highlight reel of famous names and capital cities, but true innovation, the kind that genuinely builds the world, often happens in quieter places. It's found in small workshops, driven by practical people solving real-world problems. The stories of Matthew Murray, John Harrison and Joseph Bramah remind us that genius doesn't have a postcode, but for a crucial period in history, it certainly seemed to have a home county. So the next time you board a train, check a map or even toss a bottle into a recycling bin, remember the quiet contribution of Yorkshire. What forgotten innovations from your region deserve to be remembered? Let us know in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.